revisiting the 1958 All-African Peoples Conference, the unfinished business of liberation and transformation, a conference called by the Institute of African Studies at the University of Ghana for December 5th to 8th, 2018, 60 years after the first conference was called. When the peoples of Ghana recovered their independence in 1957, the colonial powers were not prepared for the energies for freedom that had been unleashed. 1 year before that, the independence of Ghana, the peoples of Egypt had recovered the Suez Canal. The British and French failed in their military effort to reverse the consolidation of African sovereignty. Kwame Nkrumah and George Padmore.
You are watching a scene which may well be historic. The date, December 1958. The place, Accra, Ghana. The occasion, the rallying of people from a whole continent to discuss what may become a new USA, a United States of Africa.
Forward then to independence. To independence now. Tomorrow, the United States of Africa.
Kwame Nkrumah stressed that the liberation of Africa must be carried out by Africans themselves. He said, "We Africans alone can emancipate ourselves." Nkrumah echoed the call for the peoples of Africa then. Down with imperialism, down with colonialism, down with racialism and tribal division. African youths now know the crimes that were being committed by the colonial powers. In September of this year, the President of France apologized for the crimes that were being committed by the government of France during the war against the peoples of Algeria. At the All-African Peoples Conference, Frantz Fanon had spoken about the atrocities that were being carried out by France. In the same spirit, Britain is now paying reparations for the crimes committed by the British military against the freedom fighters of Kenya. Tom Mboya and Dr. Kiano from Kenya were two prominent Kenyans who were anti-colonial fighters who were in the All-African Peoples Conference. Tom Mboya was made the head of the chairperson of the conference. It was at this conference that Patrice Lumumba was introduced to the Pan-African world. The gathering of all African peoples 60 years later will be to carry forward the unfinished business of Africa. Kwame Nkrumah was overthrown in a military coup in 1966 by the same mindset that overthrew the president, but the same mindset that killed President Kennedy of the United States of America. The killing of Kennedy, the overthrow of Kwame Nkrumah, was an attempt to reverse African liberation. But a year later in Tanzania, the Arusha Declaration was launched by President Nyerere of Tanzania. And they said, we have been oppressed a great deal. We have been exploited a great deal. And we have been disregarded a great deal. It is our weakness that has led to our oppression and exploited and disregarded. Now we want a revolution. A revolution brings an end to our weakness so that we are never again exploited, oppressed, or humiliated. Tanzania went forward, and the peoples of Tanzania supported the liberation in all parts of Southern Africa. Tanzania anchored the OAU Liberation Committee and supported the freedom fighters from Tanzania and Mozambique. Amilcar Cabral was the great freedom fighter who told fighters for freedom that we should not tell lies, or claim any easy victories. The young people of Africa today want to carry forward that message that came from the All African Peoples of Conference. The ultimate victory of the All African Peoples came with the freedom of Nelson Mandela in 1994, when Mandela was released from jail after 27 years in jail. The freedom of Mandela from jail did not come because of the beneficence of Western imperialism. It came because of the military battles and the struggles of the peoples of Africa in their victories against imperialism. The victory of the African people over apartheid, one of the epic victories of Africa in the struggle against imperialism. We know that that victory came because of the alliance between the Cuban peoples and the peoples of Africa. We know that Kutukuna Valley changed the history of Africa. As President Fidel Castro said, the history of Africa will be written as before Kutukuna Valley and after Kutukuna Valley. It was this major victory at Kutukuna Valley that provided the conditions that laid the basis for the unification of Africa, that we are now in that stage with the African Union. Although apartheid has been overthrown, colonialism is not over. There are still colonies in Africa, such as the colonies of France in the Comoros, the peoples of the islands, of the Chagos Islands in the Indian Ocean still do not have independence, nor do the peoples of Western Sahara. There are over 15 colonies in the Caribbean where African descendants live. So the unfinished business of liberation is still before us. And as President Nyerere said, there are 4 aspects of liberation: freedom from colonialism and racial minority rule, freedom from external economic domination, freedom from poverty, injustice imposed on Africans by Africans, and mental freedom. And Bob Marley added to this to say Africans must emancipate themselves from mental slavery. Today, we now know that the freedom of Africa involved the freedom of black people everywhere, and the Black Lives Matter movement in the United States of America is the leading edge of the black liberation struggle in the USA today. The black youth in the United States of America are fighting police violence, and we have the roll call of murder of Sandra Bland, Tamir Rice, Trayvon Martin, Rekia Boyd, Eric Garner, Alton Sternill, Michael Brown, Laquan McDonald. The presidents of Africa will go to France and mourn with the French president about people being shot in France, but they will not have solidarity with the black people in the United States of America who are being shot in the street. It is not by accident that the black woman, the transgender woman, were the co-founders of the new Black Lives Matter movement in the United States of America. The Black Lives Matter movement of the United States of America have made 6 demands on the international system. End the war on black people and criminalization and dehumanization. Invest and divest, to invest in housing, divest from military, establish universal health care and decriminalization, democratic community control, political power, independent black political power, and reparations. The Caribbean community have been calling on the African Union to support reparations for slavery, colonialism, and apartheid. The 10-point program of the peoples of the Caribbean is still the program that the people of the Caribbean are calling for. Today, black people in Brazil are fighting against police brutality, where we have just seen the coming to power of a neo-fascist in Brazil. We've seen the neo-fascist of Donald Trump in the United States on Bolsonaro in Brazil. So that the struggles for independence in Africa, the struggles for the unification of Africa, the struggles for the reconstruction of Africa are going to be discussed at this conference. And this conference is against all kinds of militarism in Africa, where the people want peace, where the women want an end to the oppression of women, where young boys say they want to take women into slavery. The conference is against organizations such as Boko Haram, who say they will kidnap women and take them into slavery. The All African Peoples Conference will discuss how to support bringing back our girls. And we support the idea of Walter Rodney that the universities in Africa must be spaces of unification and emancipation. As Walter Rodney said, we must go back to the underlying movement of history and have confidence in the capacity of the people. If they could have breached the gates of colonialism through their effort, then it seems to me that they have brought into the new colonial period a capacity to breach the walls of imperialism. This is what Kwame Nkrumah had said in 1958. 60 years later, the All African Peoples Conference is calling for the dynamizing the demographic dividend. And we will end by calling on the statements of Bob Marley that Africans must unite.